And there's Bernie. And thank you for recording that, Lori. I always forget to do that. Thank you so much. So we're going to be covering creating the organization of the future, setting the direction, mission, vision, and purpose. The interesting thing about this presentation is it's one of three. So Bernie has written a book, which he'll talk to you about. And this is the first presentation on a part of the book. And then the second section of this, which will happen this summer, will be about the time that the book actually publishes. And we'll hope that you all pick it up and read it. And then the third one, which is this fall, is going to be kind of a handbook on how to use the book. And we'll answer some questions. So I hope you'll join us for all three. All of them will be recorded as this one is. So you'll have a chance to go back and view before you get to the second or the third one. So ISBM is a global network of academics, member company firms, and partner firms. We were founded in 1982 at Penn State Smeal College of Business, specifically to advance the science of marketing, innovation, and sales in B2B companies. We are the #1 institute that's devoted solely to B2B research and dissemination of that information. And we are the only institute that operates as a non-for-profit in order to do that work and share that with our member companies and with you on days like this. The interactions between practitioners and academics are unique for us. And so at Penn State, we have a group of folks that focus on training the next B2B researchers and focusing on finding the solutions to problems that our member company firms pose or our practitioner firms that are in the space. We have a long list of distinguished research fellows, of which Bernie is one. And there's just a smattering then of the universities that they come from. And then our membership is an equally interesting collection of companies that spend time with us, learning, helping us understand where there's gaps in the knowledge, and generally all of them improving their B2B marketing skills. And then we have partner firms and practice fellows that also support our members. They teach classes for us. They help them become more competent and find improvements in processes and competencies. And then there's the ISBM team. So over on the left are our academic fellows. Stefan is in charge of ISBM along with Andrew, and Gary Lillian, who's on the call, is emeritus director from the academic side. Over on the right, you have me and my partner, Rand Mendez, who run the practitioner-facing side, along with Ralph Oliva. He's the emeritus executive from that side, and many of you might remember Ralph. And then in the center is Lori, who is behind the scenes running all things and taking care of everything and making sure everything works. We have just released an update to our business-to-business marketing handbook. It's the second edition, so it updates all of the previous first edition. If you are a member company and you did not get a copy, you should send me in the chat window a shipping address, making sure that it is a shipping address where someone can receive it. We understand folks don't necessarily go into the office these days, so don't give me an address where people might not be receiving a package. Send it to your house, that's okay. But send me your address and we'll be happy to send you a copy. We also want to remind you that in B2B Pulse, you can find all of our knowledge assets. Everything that we have been producing in webinars and member meetings are all available to you there. We've also started writing a blog, so it's our second week of insights, and so you will be getting emails as well called ISBM Insights once a week with interesting articles for you to read. Coming up, we have in June, the 6 steps to future-proof your B2B marketing for greater ROI, another webinar. We have the beginning of our Mastery Track series, where if you have joined the world of marketing from another career path, say like research or product development or production, you'll find that to be very, very helpful to get you up to speed quickly in everything you need to know about marketing. On July 11th, Bernie will be back with us for part 2. Put that on your calendars and feel free to sign up right now. We have a course June 20th on storytelling that you might like for being able to do better content marketing. September 12th, we have the third part of this series. And then on September 26th to 28th, I hope you will mark your calendars for our members meeting in person in Chicago. And we'll hope that you'll see us there. The topic of that is about AI and B2B. Okay, we always have the question, can I get the slides for this or replay this? Yes, the answer is yes. We're recording this right now, and the slides will be sent to you along with the recording if you signed up for this. If you have a shared login because someone sent it to you, then that didn't mean you didn't register, so we don't know you. So you need to go back and register, and then we'll send you the information after this processes. So it'll be like 24 hours, and there'll be a copy of the presentation as well as the slides. Okay, we'd love to have questions. So there are places for you to type. If you go down to the bottom, you'll see this little ribbon at the bottom that if you type into the chat window or the question and answer window, you'll be able to type a question to me. I'm monitoring this while Bernie is talking, so feel free at any moment to type a question in, and Bernie would like to take questions as they come up. So if you think of something, type it in and I will interrupt him to take that question. Okay, and then if you'd like to do more follow-up, you can grab these email addresses before we turn it over to Bernie, but I'll also put them up later. Or you can just type into the chat window that you'd like to have some follow-up, and we'll make sure that we do that with you. Okay, so Bernie, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let you go. All right, it looks good. And you might be on mute.
Yeah, that mute key takes about 10 seconds to kind of get to. It's kind of like there's two things that happen in Zoom. One is I'm on the mute key, and the second is, am I sharing, right? Those are two general questions around Zoom. So thanks everybody for joining us today. What I want to do is begin with a little bit of a conversation around why this book. And my co-author, Virginia Chung, is my PhD student. She graduated a few years ago, and she wrote a dissertation on the intersection of Confucianism and Drucker's philosophies. That then led to a conversation after she graduated with a mid-sized Chinese firm around Drucker thinking. And in particular, she was the firm, the CEO was asking around Drucker thinking and Drucker ideas and so forth. So we got on our very first Zoom call with him, and he said, that's not what I want to talk about today. I'm concerned that I'm a very product-centered technology company. I'm a software-driven company. They've done very, very well. They've got a really good product roadmap, but really what he has is this central product that's been very successful in the Chinese market. And they've done well. They've grown to be probably about 350 million a year in US dollars. And they were very successful in terms of their overall brand. And they were hiring really high quality engineers from the right technical universities. So they're doing very, very well. But he said, I feel like, we don't really have a good understanding of where we're going and whether we can compete, in the future. So that led to a conversation where Virginia and I said, well, why don't we shift the gears here and start thinking about what your mission is, your vision, your purpose, your values, your culture. And so that then led to this deep conversation over about an 8-month period where we helped them develop their mission, vision, purpose, values, and culture. And that forced Virginia and I to kind of go deep around content, around Drucker and Confucianism to bring it to life for this particular company. And so once we did that, we then stepped back and said, well, where are we on this journey? And maybe we should start crafting a book. So the book actually has 2 sections. Section 1, which is around mission, vision, purpose, values, culture, and then how to do it. And section B of the book is actually an overview of the work of Drucker and an overview of the work of Confucianism and their intersection. So that's kind of where this all led. So it was a bit of sort of a random journey, but I think what I'd like to do is kind of make 3 comments, then I'll let Virginia add any commentary around what happened along the journey here. So why this book? Well, the very first reason is that firms need to compete in 2 time periods. They need to compete in the present, and they need to compete in the future if they want to be around for 10, 15, 20 years or longer. In the world of today's strategy academics, people call that ambidexterity, but Drucker wrote about this idea back in 1954. And what he said is, great firms can manage continuity and change. Continuity and change. Continuity means lock in and deliver a business model that makes a lot of money in the short run based upon deep customer understanding. And part B is figure out where the future is going and help accelerate the future, and then design a particular organization that can best meet the needs in the future. My dogs in the background really like that idea, as you kind of hear them kind of adding value here to this conversation. So point number one is the reason you want a mission, vision, purpose is you want to be able to not just be locked and loaded and stuck in a historical period with particular products, you want to be able to compete in the future. So understanding kind of crafting a mission, vision, purpose that allows you to do that is something that is core to thinking about the motivation for the book. The second motivation for the book is getting people to be more deeply committed to what the organization is attempting to achieve. And then the third reason is I'm talking about 6 slides is around Drucker's notion of contribution. That what you want is you want all employees to understand the mission, to deeply commit to it. And Drucker said, bend the will of the employee towards the mission of the organization. So those are the 3 fundamental challenges that are in front of us. And having a really strong and clear mission, vision, and purpose is one mechanism to help get us to the future. So the book really has 2 sections to it. In section A, one is what we call direction setting, which is mission, vision, and purpose. And the second is the reason we started talking more about values and culture is that it provides the guardrails around which you achieve your mission, vision, and purpose. So I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to kind of tell the dogs to stop barking, and I'm going to hand off to Virginia for a minute or 2 here.
So, yeah, thank you, Bernie. I just want to add one point, because although it started from a Chinese firm, but it's really those challenges are global issues. And we also practice this idea with other international firms. It seems like it seems like useful and supportive for the global and managers as well. It's not just a problem in China, but also for the international companies as well.
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay, so what then is the mission? Now, the catch for each of these things, purpose, vision, mission, there's a million definitions, right? So let's be clear about what we mean and then what we're evaluating, right? So for Drucker, the key question is a very simple question, which is what business are we in from the point of view of the customer? So if that's the mission, what are the criteria to evaluate whether in fact you have a very good mission statement or not? Well, the first criteria is that the mission statement should not focus on products or technology. It should focus on the underlying benefits you're delivering to customers. There's an interesting issue as to why it's not called DVD flicks and it's called Netflix. Back in the late 90s, when Reed Hastings was playing around with the idea of, and as well as his other co-CEO, Anthony, were thinking about what to do in this space, Mark Randolph, they realized that even though less than 1% of the business of entertainment was in streaming, they saw the future as the internet, and so hence Netflix. Point being is that you always want to focus on the underlying benefit that's being delivered to customers, not on the existing product or technology. The second thing, which is a little bit more controversial, is we believe good mission statements should specify the target customer. Now, the target customer could be very broad, which we're fine with, but we have to understanding about what benefits to what particular target segment are we addressing. The third issue is Drucker made the argument that it needs to fit on a t-shirt, and he said this way back in the 1970s. Idea is 1 sentence or 2 sentences in the best of all worlds. It should be inspirational. It should be highly motivating for individuals to actually be part of an organization that is delivering this benefit against that particular target segment. Drucker has a notion that needs to be grounded in the theory of the business. The theory of the business is the environmental and industry context in which the firm operates in. Really good firms sit down and think through what is the overall industry and environmental context that we're operating in. What is our point of view about the 5 or 6 key trends that are shaping the evolution of where the industry is going? If the theory of the business has changed from when you first had your mission statement, then you actually have to reset your mission statement, right? Drucker also had a point of view that the industry context and the environment the firm was competing with was not static. You didn't do a Porter-like 5-force analysis and say that's the industry structure. Instead, really great managers managed the industry structure they competed in. They influenced and shaped the evolution of the industry structure. And then this last point is really, really critical. people misunderstand management by objectives. Management by objectives, according to Drucker, was the ability for the employee to deeply understand the mission, have a conversation with his or her boss around what that mission meant and what that boss needed to achieve against that unit and what that unit needed to achieve against the mission. In fact, Drucker made the argument that job descriptions are incredibly limiting because they put people in a box. Instead, if we cut in around contribution, what is the mission, in my case, what's the mission of my Drucker school? What does my dean want to achieve? What do I want to do to help achieve that? And then there's a conversation that goes back and forth, but it's initiated by the worker and bent towards the direction of what that particular organization is attempting to achieve. So unless the mission statement, unless everybody in the organization can read the mission statement, understand it, and can answer the question, what can I do to contribute? It's probably not a good mission statement. Okay, so those are our 6 criteria. Let's take a look at a couple of mission statements that we liked. So for those of you who follow the world of transportation, we always used to teach mission statements of General Motors and Ford and Toyota as they're not in the business of cars, they're in the business of transportation. One of the fascinating things over the last few years, as many of these car companies have moved to the notion of mobility, that they're in the business of a future mobile society, right? Enriching lives around the world with the safest and most responsible ways of moving people around, right? So their target customer has always been accessible, affordable transportation, but there's been a fundamental shift around the move from transportation over to mobility, with the notion being that when we think about automobiles, when we think about trucks, there's actually any autonomous vehicle, any electric scooter, anything else that's broad can be something that reaches that particular underlying benefit. So the underlying benefit is really not so much transportation as it is mobility, right? And you can see from the standpoint of kind of where they're going with the evolution of cars becoming hardware over to software, with the advent of different ways of thinking about transportation and what we do with vehicles, not just about people, but also moving goods, services, as well as, you know, your Uber Eats and so forth. It's a very, very different world. So this notion of the key benefit as being mobility as opposed to transportation is a very interesting evolution of where the business is going. Let me state 2 more mission statements, then I'm going to pause for a moment here. We like Amgen's mission statement, right? Amgen is in the business of biotechnology. They were founded back in the late 80s, early 90s. They're the largest independent biotech company in the world, Genentech being owned by Roche, portion of it. So Amgen's in the business of important therapies that are addressing grievous illness, right? So it's significant, challenging issues. And what's interesting about the idea, the other thing here is that they're serving patients. They're not saying we're serving the healthcare community. We're not saying we're serving physicians. We're not serving insurance companies. We're fundamentally focused on patients, right? And we're using biotechnology in therapies, and we're focused on significant issues to save health, to restore health, save lives, and so forth. What's interesting is you can see here where individuals could align themselves with that particular mission statement. It's stated in a way that's very clear. If I'm in manufacturing, if I'm in operations, I'm in sales, I'm in marketing, I'm in R&D, I can see my role in helping to align against that particular mission. And then lastly is Disney. Disney is in the business of storytelling. When you think about all the properties that Disney has, from ESPN to Disney Plus, to thinking about the theme parks, their job really is entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe. This is now the very broad notion of who that target market is. It's folks around the globe looking for entertainment. But what do they value? They value storytelling. How storytelling unfolds, whether it's a magazine, whether it's online, whether it's streaming, whether it's a movie theater, whether it's at the amusement park, that's fine. But storytelling is the essence that pulls it all together. Okay. I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions, concerns that have come up, Lynn, in the chat room, because I'm going to have an exercise coming up right after this.
So just one that came through is how often should someone revisit this? Is there a time frame that we get that if something changes in the environment, or if your purpose changes, which frankly, you know, if you really haven't thought about this, then that's kind of like a chicken and egg, you know, just do my purpose change? But like in an average sense, are people revisiting this every 10 years, every 3 years? What does that look like?
Yeah. Our experience is that it's usually 5 to 6 years out, but that's a real question mark. So, for example, Netflix has sort of had to reinvent itself several times over the last 20 years because the industry's moved so quickly. Somebody like Cargill could have a mission statement that could be in place for 25, 30 years, you know. So it really is a question of the way that we think about it is we think great firms specify 5 or 6 key trends they believe are fundamentally reshaping their industry. And then they bet behind those trends. If 3 years in the future, those 5 trends are not there anymore, it's some other trends, the firm has to then reconfigure what it's doing. So the way to really focus this energy is to think about the 5 or 6 most important trends, articulate what those are, have the mission statement behind those, and really be asking ourselves every year, have those changed in any fundamental way? And if they have, then we have to revisit our mission.
So you're hooking your wagon to a future that might occur as opposed to past.
Yeah. But what's interesting about the point of view is we are saying we believe these are the trends, right? So we're not saying there's 200 trends out there. We're saying these are 5 or 6 of the most important. We're lying behind it. And people get anxiety around that. But don't forget, Drucker's saying you shape those trends. You know, in other words, so Drucker's not saying I'm sitting back passively waiting for trends come at me. You know, I'm actually shaping where those trends are going. So I'm looking at those trends, but also at the same time accelerating those trends to the extent that I can. So I love those trends because I want them to happen, and I'm going to do everything in my power to align myself to them. You know, a good example is someone like ResMed in the sleep apnea market. But 10 years ago, they embedded a chip inside of the machine that sits next to your bed that powers the mask. And they embedded a chip, and now they have full information flow for the patient to read their sleep apnea score, for the physician to look at the scores of what's happening with the patient, for the insurers to get full compliance data, for the durable equipment manufacturers that are the channel to reduce their labor costs by 40% as a result of that. So it was an oligopoly. They were competing with Philips Respironics. Once they ResMed moved into digital information flow, AI-driven software, Philips had to follow them. That's where they could have gone low cost, but once they followed them, that means Philips was following in their wake. So ResMed was shaping the industry, and Philips is like, I'm gonna have to follow in their wake, you know, and that's what you want, right? So it's really taking a proactive stance towards the external environment. Okay, listen, in the interest of time, I'm gonna do a quick scoring here. So for folks that are online that can pull up their mission statement and take a look at it, the question that we'd ask you is, we want to see scores of 8, 9, and 10 in terms of mission statement. So the mission is clear and the mission is precise. It focuses on the underlying benefits, not on products technology. It energizes employees from our common goal, and employees consistently behave in ways that are supportive of the mission. If I go to any employee in the company, they could tell me the mission tomorrow, right? And the question really is, if it's all about contribution, I need to know the mission. That's how we're going to gain alignment, right? So the question is, do people actually know this, right? So I'm curious what's coming up at this point, Lynn, whether we're getting any positive or negative energy around what our mission is and whether we have a strong mission statement.
So would you like to have folks type in where they think they are?
Yeah, if folks would just give us a score of 7, 8, 9, 10, 5, 6, 7, where you think you might fall. I'm just curious.
Okay. So in the chat, if everybody would just open up the chat and type in a number that feels like where you are, and don't hit send just yet, just go into the chat window and get ready to type a number, and then we'll do a waterfall flow. So, okay, so I'm gonna mine in there too. Okay. So if everybody would hit send and give me a number, we'll get a flow of numbers. Everybody will get to see the numbers all at the same time. All right, Lynn did it. Not sure everybody else did it. Okay. It makes a better flow. Oh, I see. You've got it in the Q&A window. So we've got 10 and 6. Can we get a few others? 7, 8. We got a 10. That's good.
That's amazing.
Oh, chat is disabled. Thank you for letting me know that. Lori might not know that. Okay, so thank you. I can send to you, but you can't send to me in this one. Okay. All right. So we've got 6, 7, 10, 8, 7, 6.
Those are actually, that's actually pretty good. And if we have more time, I'd love to hear about the 10, but it's not atypical for Virginia to do this and get some sort of normal distribution around the 5. That's sort of very typical. So the fact that we're actually at 7, 8, 9s, and 10s is actually quite impressive. So we'll come back to that issue. By the way, my dogs have decided they want to have an all-out fight in the room that I'm in. So I hid out in a different room in the house, but the dogs somehow find me. So you're going to hear some background growling. Hopefully it's not going to be too loud. All right. Otherwise, Virginia's going to have to pick up the conversation. I'm going to shout at them for a second. Hold on. Okay, let's see how long that lasts. All right. What's the vision? The vision, it answers a very simple question of what does the world look like when we've accomplished our mission, right? So here again, we have 6 criteria. And the idea is, once we've accomplished our mission, what does the end state look like? So if we have a very clear goal we're attempting to achieve, what does that look like? What does the world look like when we're done, when we've accomplished our mission? Second issue, not surprisingly, concise, ideally 1 sentence. A third issue, which is kind of fun to think about, is imagery-based language. Can you state the vision in a way that people kind of understand it at a kind of very visceral, emotional level? So if you're in the business of something like Swatch, it might be a watch on every arm. That's kind of really kind of clear, so you can see and visualize what the end state looks like. Visions of the end state, if we accomplish our mission and we get there, it's inspirational. The workforce sees it and says, I get it, I understand that. It can't be a fantasy world. The vision has to be attainable. It can be a stretch goal. It can be something very difficult to achieve. That's fine. But people can't look at it and say that's unrealistic. We can never get there. They have to have a sense. It may take them a long time to get there, but they have a sense that it actually is something they can actually achieve. And the last point is, if you're trying to recruit folks that have this deep commitment to what that vision is, and you're trying to build off the mission, ideally it has some distinctiveness relative to competition, right? Now, that's not always the case, but ideally, if you can do something that's a bit distinctive, that's the best of all worlds. Now, I'm going to show you a couple of visions that we like. And by the way, the fact that we have these 6 criteria doesn't mean that the particular illustration scores high in all of them, because the reality is that it's very difficult to achieve a vision that scores very high in all 6 criteria. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple that we have here. Habitat for Humanity, I think, is a really interesting mission. A world where everybody has a decent place to live, right? Very powerful message. The end state is everybody, and the target customer is these typically low-income families. They can be in rural areas, they can be in urban areas, but we're really trying to give them a sense of comfort, a sense of belonging, a sense of accomplishment in terms of delivering these homes. And you can see it's very inspirational. You know, they've had a massive impact, right? 46 million people that have been impacted by the construction of these new homes. And now they've migrated more towards natural resources and other things that would be much more sustainable in terms of how they go about doing it. It's a really interesting organization that we're all familiar with. Caterpillar was one that's interesting. Virginia and I kind of took a look at. And what's interesting is we really like this vision statement of specifying the end goal of where they're at. It's a little wordy in our judgment, but our vision is a world in which all people's basic needs, shelter, clean water, sanitation, food, reliable power, are fulfilled in an environmentally sustainable way, in a company that improves the quality of the environment and the communicates in communities where we live and work. It's a clear end state. It's obviously very aspirational because it's very, very focused on basic needs of everybody. And that's going to be very hard for them to achieve, but it's a broad scope in terms of what they're trying to do. It's very inspirational for the workforce, building roads, bridges, connections, opportunity, infrastructure, right? These are things that really can shape, particularly poverty or low-income communities in sort of fundamental ways. It's distinct from competition. Those of you who catch the Caterpillar case, there's a number of very distinctive things they do in terms of how they manage the distribution channels and other things that they do in terms of product development. Obviously, very competitive with Komatsu and other players, but still, relatively speaking, somewhat distinctive in terms of where they're going. And then finally, Warby Parker, very simple. We believe that buying glasses should be easy and fun. It should leave you happy and good looking with money in your pocket. We believe that everybody has a right to see. What I love about this one is it's written in language that a 12 or 13-year-old can understand, and it's very imagery based. It's fun. I go to the store, I have lots of samples. It's actually very stylish, but it's actually very cost effective by the way they redistributed and reconfigured their overall value chain, right? So it's kind of an interesting one where you have, and also for those of you who have been into the Warby Parker stores, this is a very high service orientation, high degree of connection, a greater sense of purpose, right? Buy a pair, give a pair program. So in our judgment, scores quite nicely on our criteria. Okay. All right. I'm going to do an exercise now, which is your vision statement. So once again, here, Lori, I'm going to ask people to kind of score, or Lynn, score people on their vision statement and throw it into the chat room. I'm also going to ask for any Q&A at this point in terms of thinking about where we are in terms of our overall vision statement.
Okay, so if you would, in the Q&A window, which you have available to you, just type the number that makes sense for you and hit send. I'll respond to those as you put them in. But we do have two questions, Bernie. So first, we have a question that says, do you recommend a mission and vision for each department within an organization that connects to the overall organization?
My apologies. I was hoping to start off our overall talk saying, I know a lot of people are coming in here from a marketing perspective, marketing excellence, sales and marketing. You have to tweak these a little bit, but I would say, for example, if I'm running a marketing excellence program, I'm trying to build marketing capability in my organization, I'm going to want to have a mission for that. I'm going to have a vision for that. And I'm going to have a purpose for that. And all three of those need to be aligned with the overall purpose of the organization. But you can use these, it requires a little tweaking, but you can use these at different levels of analysis. I think that's an important, really good question. And I should have started with that.
Good, thank you. And Lori tells me that chat might be working too. So wherever you put your number is good. I'll find it. Just type your number that goes along with your vision score. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to give you another question, Bernie. So what is your thought on vision statements with the vision of a world that the specific company can't achieve by itself? Like Caterpillar, is that okay, even though you can't do all of it? Or would you avoid that?
Yeah, so this is correlated actually with a couple of things. Number one is one of the interesting trends in competitive strategy over the last 10 years has been a migration away from firm to firm competition to ecosystem versus ecosystem. Some firms call those platform plays that are online, but it's really an ecosystem play. So Caterpillar, what's interesting for Caterpillar is their ability to develop a network of players, both within their system, i.e. the distributors, and outside of their systems, government agencies, to be able to kind of really work in concert with multiple organizations to deliver against the vision. So number one is we're seeing a lot of move away from do it alone to do it with others as kind of a general trend that's happening, which means you get to operate at a bigger size, which means you have a better chance of operating it and realizing the vision. The second thing is, if the vision, even if the vision is very broad and it's going to be somewhat difficult to attain, if the employees in the organization deeply believe this is a noble mission, a noble direction, one that I can get behind, even if it's exceptionally challenging for that organization to realize it, then I think you're fine. So the litmus test for me would be, do the employees look at that and say, who cares, right? It's crazy. Or do the employees look at it and say, no, that's central to what we do. And if the employees believe it, then all of a sudden I'm going to be a lot more comfortable with kind of where they're going. And you can feel that in the room when you're with employees and you have those conversations. My judgment.
Okay, great. Here's another one. If you have a minute, can you speak a little bit to maybe a nonprofit and an art-related nonprofit whose mission and vision is more ephemeral and maybe harder to measure?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Drucker in his life, by the time it got to be the 1970s, a lot of Drucker's work was focused on in the social sector for non-government, government, NGOs, and so forth. He did a lot of work for the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, Girl Scouts, and other organizations. And so he has this book called the 5 most important questions. And that book is fundamentally geared towards developing mission statements and everything stuff for nonprofits. So point number 1 is that all of these concepts actually work quite nicely for nonprofit organizations or social sector type organizations. The challenge that people sometimes lose sight of is to make sure they understand who their target customer is. The target customer is the person they actually serve, but they have to pull in their volunteer network and their sponsoring organizations in a way to align against what the customer they're attempting to serve, which is the person actually receiving the services from them. And so we've done some work in that sector for a organization, a nonprofit, to help them think through, actually 2 nonprofits, to help them think through this issue. And you need to tweak it a little bit, but the basic concepts make sense, in that space. And I would, if someone's here from a nonprofit, I would buy that book on the 5 most important questions. I think it's a very thin, crisp overview of how to think about some of these issues.
Great, thank you. Okay, that's our questions.
All right, excellent. We're in the home stretch. So if you look 20 years ago, probably a handful of Fortune 500 companies would have purpose statements, literally purpose statements, where on their website, Unilever says, here's our purpose. Heineken says, here's our purpose. Caterpillar says, here's our purpose. Nowadays, our back of the envelope would suggest that probably 50% of Fortune 500 companies have an explicit purpose statement. And the purpose statement is distinct from mission statement and distinct from vision statements in that it focuses on the societal benefit. Why do we exist? What is the societal benefit? Now, for a small community existing in a small region, the impact can be on that region, right? For broader companies, the societal benefit is impact the world, right? But the issue is this, in some way, shape, or form, what Drucker argued is the role of organizations in society. They have an ethical and moral responsibility to help society function. In a world where society is composed mostly of organizations, large, medium, small, nonprofit, social sector, for-profit, there's nobody left to help society function well except these organizations. So organizations have a moral and ethical responsibility to help society function better. So what are we doing here in terms of thinking about what does it mean to help society function better? What are criteria for a purpose statement? So the first criteria is what we just specified here is, does the purpose statement show very clearly how our organization is helping society, either globally or locally, function better? Second criteria is, does it really touch me? Does it touch the heart and mind as to how it is that our organization is benefiting society? The third is, do I have a purpose statement where I am very proud and energized and feeling excited to go to work to help deal with the issues that we're working on in a way that allows society to improve? Fourth is, there has to be, if it's not explicit, somebody has to connect the dots on why the activities we're engaged in help society improve. All right, so there may be a line of sight issue where you have to explicitly make clear what that purpose is in a way that is helping society improve. So certainly Patagonia is a poster child for this. So I'm not just going to use this example, but I am going to start with this example. And he has the founder has this really wonderful statement that around going purpose. And if you look at the very last statement in this slide, you see, instead of going public, we're going purpose. Instead of extracting value from nature and transforming it for wealth for investors, Patagonia uses it, wealth creates, to protect all sources of wealth, right? And so now this, you can make an argument, that it's, saving a planet is maybe too broad of an issue, right? But it is an issue of, they are trying to figure out how to develop that circular economy. They're committed deeply to it. Anybody who joins this organization understands kind of their mission, their vision, and their purpose, right? And they're trying to figure out what it is that we can do to help deliver against that, right? So Patagonia is a bit of a hackneyed example, I think, maybe. And so let's go to a second example. Johnson & Johnson, who is, a poster child for running a really good company. You can take a look at the quote from the CEO down at the bottom here. Our purpose defines and guides the work we do each and every day. To get there, we are focusing a lot of our attention on helping our employees find and activate their purpose and connect it with our mission, actually connect it with their purpose, right? We've seen that cultivating, developing a deep sense of purpose leads employees who are more engaged personally and professionally. So their purpose is noted as we blend heart, science, and ingenuity to profoundly change the trajectory of health for humanity, right? And so these words of profoundly change and ingenuity and change the direction and trajectory are really kind of important parts, right? So they're connecting these dots of, it's not just about, science, it's about heart and ingenuity that's delivering this, right? And then we lead with this accountability and innovation, commitment to science, data-driven decision-making, compliance, integrity, responsible business practices. These are all some of their values that give rise and provide the guardrails for achieving this overall purpose that they have. And then finally, we have our example of Chobani. And we all know of Chobani yogurt. It's now the fastest growing yogurt in the United States. And the mission statement, I think, is really kind of an important one here, thinking about kind of what they do. And I think that, as you think about kind of the statement here, better food for more people, right? So, it's not about having low-income folks not have great diets, great access to food. They want to make delicious, nutritious, natural, accessible food at an affordable price with heart and passion, right? So again, this is an interesting illustration. Now, it doesn't have to be an organization like a Warby Parker or a Chobani that actually contributes to philanthropic efforts. They can, but that's not what we're getting at here. We're getting at helping society function better. And if it just happens to have charitable organizations, that's fine. But our role is to help that. Our role as an organization to help achieve that, whether it's done through a foundation or not, we're not really concerned about that. It's more about the activities of everything the organization does to help improve society in some way, shape, or form. So our last little exercise then focuses on purpose. And so, by the way, I want some people to tell us whether or not they have a purpose statement, right? So in the Q&A this time around, I want us to find out whether we do have a purpose, yes, no. And if we do have a purpose, how do we score the purpose? All right, so there's two parts to this, yes, no, and how do we score it?
Okay, great. I encourage folks to put things into the chat window or in the Q&A. I'll be able to see them either place. Just please give us a little insight. And while you're doing that, I had an interesting question come in, and I purposely held this for a little bit because I kind of knew where you were going. So now I would like you to tell us, Bernie, how does all this loop back around to brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. So the brand has to be, so a couple of thoughts about that. Number one is brand, we oftentimes think about brand is from the customer perspective. So it's not about what you think your brand is doing. It's about what the customer feels is happening with your brand, right? So understands it, articulates, what are the word associations that your target customers have of your brand, okay? That actually has to be highly correlated with aspects that we just talked about what business are we in, what are the benefits we're providing, what is the end game that we want to get to, and then what's their overall purpose, what's the societal benefit. Now, the extreme here has been, we've all been following the story of Unilever and the challenges of Unilever saying they're going to be a purpose-driven company with purpose-driven brands, right? And they've had some hiccups in terms of financial performance. Paul Pullman is now out, new CEO in. They're maybe backing up a little bit from being this sort of purpose-driven, classical purpose-driven company. But they basically argument is that all their brands, whether it's the Dove or other things, are all going to be important. So there's a few quick points here. Number one is your brand, your corporate brand needs to be aligned with mission, vision, and purpose. Point number one. Point number two is it has to be customer driven and customer facing, right? It's not what you think your brand is doing. It's what the customer thinks your brand is doing relative to what the customer thinks you're doing on your mission, vision, and purpose. And then the last point is you can actually run this analysis a little bit through particular brands in the marketplace, not the corporate brand, but the actual brand of products and services that you provide, and do a very similar type of analysis of, does that particular brand support our mission, vision, and purpose, right? So the short answer here is needs to be correlated, needs to be thought through, should not be a random walk in order for the organization to deliver against that.
It almost feels like it's a reflection, like the marketplace can tell you whether you've hit your mission, vision, purpose, because your brand should reflect it. And if it doesn't, then you've missed the mark.
I think that's correct. That's exactly right. And sometimes you go brand first and back into it. We're arguing we want to go mission, vision, purpose first, and then look at the brand second. That would be our sequence. But the brand is out there in the marketplace. It already has meaning, so you have to take that into account as you think about its feedback loop back to the mission, vision, and purpose.
So our responses are that there are a lot of folks who don't seem to have a purpose statement for their company. That's interesting too.
Yeah.
And then we have one more question. So as a marketer, what's our role in shaping and sustaining this mission, vision, and purpose in the corporate world?
Yeah. So, you know, now, of course, my background's marketing. So of course so let me say a few words about that. The first thing is, you know, one of the interesting things that has unfolded over the last 3 decades is people making a distinction between market and marketing. That organizations need to be market focused. It doesn't necessarily mean the marketing function drives everything, but organizations need to be market focused. And being market focused, if you think about everything we just talked about, helping society function, know the underlying benefit of what the customer is being delivered against, understand the vision of the world and the end game from the customer perspective. So everything we've talked about is sort of from the customer perspective, the market perspective. And my view of the world is every area of the organization has a responsibility to help deliver against the mission, vision, and purpose. It just so happens that marketing oftentimes owns the voice of the marketplace within the organization. So in that sense, marketing has a disproportionate role of being able to collate the data that's coming in and to help inform the office of the CEO. They have a richer, broader perspective, not because because they're in the job. Their job is to understand the marketplace, customers, competitors, technology changes, product changes, and aggregate that and understand the voice of the marketplace. And in that sense, they then, you know, can provide a more preferred access to folks that are making the big decisions around mission, vision, and purpose. So I think every function has a role, but marketing has a disproportionate role. And in particular, in a world where we think about it being market versus marketing as the critical information that we're kind of talking about here.
Yeah, that is the interesting thing of if a company is market focused, then they have to have somebody bringing in the market information. And if it's not marketing, someone has to. So that's a very good point.
Yeah.
We have another question that came in. It says, how does value innovation fit into the vision, mission, and purpose?
Well, if we're using the term value innovation to be focused on, one of the fascinating things about business is when someone says, hey, that's value, you don't know whether that's financial value or whether that's customer value, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to interpret this as customer-led innovation, customer value-based innovation. So, and I'm not going to look at it value as a value play, a low end of the market. I'm going to look at what is the value that's being provided from the innovation, right? And if we look at it that way, whenever you look at the value of the innovation, you're looking at the value of that innovation of, you know, the overall cost benefit analysis. You're looking at what is the overall benefit providing, what's the cost that I'm giving up to receive that, and does that give-get matrix work out for me? So in that sense, there's a very high correlation with this underlying need of what is the benefit that we're looking for, what is the unfelt need, what is the customers are looking for but they can't state. All of that is correlated with this notion of value-based innovation, which then helps us deliver overall against our overall mission.
Great. Okay, I've gone through all the questions that came in.
So we have 2 or 3 minutes left. And I know I went through this material fairly quickly. You know, one of the real challenges of covering so much material is trying to get the right balance of stuff. So we have 2 more sessions together. So if you give feedback to ISBM saying, hey, that was paced exactly right, or if you feel like it was paced a little too quickly, obviously we're storing these, we're recording them, so you can kind of view them again. But we will get feedback around, in particular around pacing, because we have 2 more seminars together. So I'm going to give a little preview of where we're going here. So the next time we get together, we're going to talk about values and culture. Values is part of culture, but we have 2 separate sections where we kind of go deep on both of these. And what does it mean to have a set of values that actually are important and driving our organization? Drucker argued every organization needs values the way that bodies need minerals and vitamins, right? So values-led goes back to the 1950s. Culture is obviously something really significant. We're always struggling with culture because whenever we do it, let's say we implement a marketing excellence program, but let's say marketing is the 3rd or 4th leg on the stool. Marketing's not going to have an impact. I don't care how much training you do in marketing excellence. It's not going to have an impact unless you change the culture. So we got to talk about cultural change, right? So we're going to talk about values and culture next time. And then in September, we're going to talk about how to do it. In the book, we lay out a roadmap, to 8-step process, 7-step process on how to do this. So that'll be the September session, okay? So the reason for setting you guys up a little bit here is we do want to get feedback around the nature of what's going on. By the way, all the slides will be made available, so you can you can reach out to us certainly, but we're going to send the slides over to Lynn and Lori, and those will be posted. Again, at this point, the book's coming out in July. We would love your feedback too. This is our first opportunity to do a seminar like this on mission, vision, and purpose. So we're looking forward to continuous feedback. The old notion of feedback is a gift, even if it doesn't feel that way, but it is a gift. So we will take feedback of any way, shape, or form. So really appreciate you attending today. So with that, I'm going to see if that last 5 minutes of rumbling caused any additional comments or questions. Otherwise, we'll give people back a few minutes here of their day.
We did. We got a piece of information from someone who said that they were just forming the mission, vision, purpose for their company. And this was very helpful because they're in HR and not in marketing. So it was
really again, this can be applied. This can absolutely be applied to the HR area. No doubt about it. And these criteria, think about these criteria as something that relates. And I'm sure you can tweak it 20% to get there, but that's wonderful. So you'll get the slide deck. Let me know how it goes. I'm curious.
Great. I don't see anything more coming in, but I'll ask you this. So the book is coming out probably about the time of our next meeting. And I can't remember how we scheduled that exactly. Where can we find the book? How can we get it digitally? Do you have it? Are you reading it on tape? Can we listen? How's it being shared?
Boy, that's a good question. So right now the plan was to do it's Amazon is our vehicle to kind of get it right. So we'll be kind of going through Amazon. That's where 98% of the sales sort of unfold. So that's the place to look for it. Whether to do an audio component to it is kind of interesting. So we're gonna, based on that comment, I'm actually going to talk to the publisher about that, about doing an audio version. At a minimum, you can hear me put you to sleep, I suppose. I don't want that, people driving home, my voice puts them to sleep. That's probably not a good thing. So, but I love that idea. So we're going to, based on what you just said, Lynn, I'm going to talk with the publisher and see what we can do about that. But right now it's just paperback and hardcover at this point in July.
Okay, good. So you can go to Amazon. It might actually be there for you to pre-order. It might not, but we will send a note out to our folks when we start asking folks to register for the second webinar to remind them to go get it. It would be great if you got it, but we're definitely going to want it for the third one. So hopefully everybody will go and have a look. I don't see any more questions. Oh, wait, there's something. Okay, just very, very helpful to have all these things and very nice comments and a person votes for Audible. Okay, so I'll let y'all read those notes in the chat. So wait, and there's something more. Hold on, they keep coming. So a lot of this is from the point of view of an already existing organization. Do you have any advice for someone who is a startup?
Yeah, I think startup is a great position to be in. I think a startup could take this and just carte blanche, work exactly with it. Don't forget, Drucker said every 3 years, management should have an offsite where everything is open for grabs, everything. And so what he's really asking the question to do is start over. If we're going to start the business over again today, knowing what we now know, what would we do? And so one way to clear out some of the assets you have that are no longer valuable is to run this offsite. The beauty of the startup is you get to kind of do that from scratch. So you're unconstrained by the future. So I think this same framework would work quite nicely for a startup.
Great. And I think it's a beautiful thing to do for a startup, because if you tend to start the business without doing this, you're going to find yourself with too many options. So I think it actually helps narrow your focus and concentrate you. It's
I think
great.
that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much on behalf of Virginia and I for the opportunity to spend the day with you. We really appreciate it. Looking forward to your feedback, and we will see you in July.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Virginia. Thank you, Bernie. And we'll see you in July too.
Thank you.